You're listening to The Voice of Dog. This is Rob McWolf, your fellow traveler, and today's story is The Whole Moon by K.C. Shaw, who lives in Atlanta with her lucky black cats, Dracula and Belladonna. You can find more of her stories on her Patreon, or in the collection Catfish and Other Stories. Read by the author. Please enjoy The Whole Moon by K.C. Shaw.
Charlotte forgot her friend was coming over until Dan said, "Oh, great. Three's company, you know." Charlotte set down the bowl of popcorn, which she had just carried in from the kitchen. Dan held up his phone to show her. The DoorCam app showed a skunk wearing retro 50s glasses perched on her muzzle, a black thrift shop dress with black plastic roses sewn around the waist, and a purple Eda bag over her shoulder. The skunk put a paw up, and a moment later the doorbell buzzed. "I forgot all about meeting her for coffee," Charlotte said. "Reschedule." Dan reached for the remote. "Movie night, remember? Date night." Charlotte hurried to open the door. "Hi, Lydia." Lydia's smile froze on her muzzle. "Oh my gods, you're not going out dressed like that, are you? We can't roam the dark streets like lost children of the night in a pink Camden Comets t-shirt. If you're going to use we that way, technically, we are dressed in the gown we were wearing when we saw the ghost. Also, we, meaning I in this case, totally sewed those roses on for you." Lydia laughed. "Okay, sure, but are you going to change or not?" Behind them, Dan said, "She can't come, Lydia. It's date night." The MGM lion roared from Dan's surround sound speakers. Charlotte shrugged. "I'm sorry, Lydia. I honestly forgot. Dan's been so busy lately that we've hardly had any time to relax together. Can we reschedule?" "Sure." Lydia's usual chirpy voice hid an undercurrent of disappointment. Maybe no one else would have noticed, but it bothered Charlotte. "Are you free tomorrow?" "I think so. I'll have to check." Dan called, "We're going to see my mom tomorrow night." He had to raise his voice over the blare of opening credit music. "I'll text you," Lydia said with a wave. Dan was glaring at the screen and eating popcorn when Charlotte rejoined him. He'd picked the movie, and of course it was an action film. A wolf in dark sunglasses was leaning out the window of a sports car, fur rippling in the wind as he drove. "Want me to run it back?" Dan asked. "Did I miss anything important?" "Not really." Charlotte considered explaining that she didn't appreciate him butting into her conversations, and that she'd like him to check with her before he made plans for them both, but she knew it would end in an argument. It would start with, "You just don't like my mom," and escalate from there. Then Dan gave her his most charming smile, the one where his brown eyes sparkled with puppyish mischief, and his tongue lolled over his white teeth. Her irritation melted away. Sometimes she marveled that a handsome, athletic coyote like Dan had fallen for a scruffy raccoon like her. She snuggled close to him, warm with his arm around her shoulders. They didn't argue until the movie was over. The credits were still rolling, and Charlotte was hoping the big, dumb, explodey action movie had revved Dan up enough to get frisky when he said, "I know you and Lydia have been friends for a long time, but can you just not invite her over? I mean, sure, hang out with her, just not here." Charlotte's fur prickled with anger. She said calmly, "You're asking me not to invite my best friend to visit me in my own apartment?" "It's my apartment, technically." "I don't tell you who to invite over," Charlotte said. "My friends are normal. Lydia's a weirdo." The ensuing shouting match was worse than usual. It ended with Charlotte pulling off the too tight pink tee, the one Dan had given her even though it was a size too small, because, he said, it showed off her figure, and throwing it at his head. "You're such a control freak." She slammed into the bedroom they shared, near tears of rage and despair. She hated when they fought. She opened the middle drawer, the one where she kept her clothes, and dug down until she found a black shirt. She'd bought it at her very first concert. Of course, she and Lydia had gone together, nervous in their carefully chosen outfits, trying so hard to look cool that everyone in the club that night was probably still rolling their eyes. She shrugged the shirt on. It actually fit instead of making her feel strangled and bunchy with her fur pressed down. "Babe, I don't know why you're overreacting," Dan said, opening the door. Charlotte clenched her jaw. Her tail was all puffed up and she had a hard time not making ridiculous chittering sounds. Dan would laugh if she did. She said, "If I can't have my friends over, you can't either." "I didn't say you couldn't have any friends over. I just don't like Lydia." "I don't like half your friends." "Oh my God, can we just not?" Charlotte grabbed her keys, realized her sweatpants had no pockets, and snatched her purse off the dresser. "I'm going out." "To see Lydia?" Dan asked, his voice heavy with sarcasm. He followed her to the door. "Yes, I'll see you tomorrow." "Babe, don't be dumb. You've got that presentation first thing. How will you get back here in time to get dressed before work?" Charlotte hated that he was right. She didn't answer, just shoved the door open and strode to the elevator. Dan called after her, "You've told me yourself she needs to grow up." The elevator dinged. Charlotte fumbled a tissue from her purse and tried to blot the tears before they sank into her fur and made tracks. Then she texted Lydia, "Are you still around?" The night air was clean and cold when she left the building. Winter was on its way. The thought of winter always excited her. Not the holidays, just the weather. She loved how thick her fur got, the cozy feeling of being cold-proof right down to the tips of her ears. She loved how long the winter nights were. Lydia texted, "I'm at the coffee stop on Oak Ave." That wasn't far. Charlotte checked for traffic automatically, although this part of Camden practically rolled up its sidewalks at 10 on a Thursday night. There weren't any cars on the road as Charlotte hurried across. Lydia met her outside the cafe. "Did you and Dan fight?" she asked. "Yeah." "Do you want to go in for a coffee, or do you need to walk it off?" Charlotte gave the skunk a relieved smile. There was probably no one else in the entire world who'd offer her that choice, but Lydia knew all her moods. "Walk it off." "Good. You vent, then I'll tell you what I have planned. Nice shirt, by the way." The venting took half an hour. Charlotte set a fast pace to match her agitated thoughts as she complained about Dan, her job, money, and back to Dan again. She didn't so much run down as get suddenly bored with her own life. "Ugh, sorry. Thanks for listening. Where are we?" "Riverside, which is perfect." "It's kind of dangerous down here." "Pff, no one's going to bother us. Not with me around, anyway." Lydia grinned, showing her small, sharp teeth. "They keep doing studies about skunks, and they keep being surprised at how few people mess with us. I don't know why." They both laughed. "That's so gross, though," Charlotte said. "I don't even want to think about having anal glands, much less, Remember Bill Bradley in 7th grade? He never forgave you." "Well, I never forgave him," Lydia said with angry satisfaction, "and I bet he never tried to grab another girl's boobs. What a perv." Neither of them needed to discuss the details. Charlotte hadn't been there when Lydia pulled her skirt up, bent down, and sprayed Bill right in the face during PE, but she knew all about it. The school actually closed the gym for a week for special fumigation. With typical middle school justice, Lydia was the one suspended even though she'd been defending herself, and instead of being angry about Bill's behavior, most of the girls in school, and all of the boys, were fixated on the fact that Lydia never wore underwear. "Skunks don't," Charlotte had told everyone, fiercely loyal. For weeks afterwards, people would pinch their nostrils closed when Lydia came near. She always had a sarcastic comment to prove she didn't care, but Charlotte remembered how often Lydia cried after school. "Anyway," Lydia said cheerfully, "if you're feeling better, let me tell you about my next project. I think we should have a lair for rituals." "What rituals?" Charlotte asked with a half smile, still thinking about 7th grade. That was literally half her life ago. It shouldn't still make her angry. "Rituals will make up eventually," Lydia said, gesturing as though waving away an unimportant detail. "Okay, sure. Where will this lair be, your walk-in closet?" "No, we're planning to rent that out." "Seriously?" "I voted against it, but if we have a 4th roommate, it takes some of the pressure off us all. If you know anyone who needs an extremely small living space, send them my way." They'd been walking slowly down Riverside Drive, which divided the town's new warehouse district from the old one. The new warehouses were squat, ugly buildings with concertina wire-topped fences. while the old ones were taller, if not so broad, and made of softly weathered brick. A few of the brick buildings had been converted into expensive studio apartments, but the rest were abandoned. Lydia gestured again, this time at the buildings. One of these empty warehouses would be perfect for our lair. We just have to sneak inside and explore. Charlotte looked at Lydia to make sure she wasn't joking. Lydia, we can't break into these buildings. Sure we can. A lot of the upper windows are already broken. We just have to get up there. If we can get in, other people can too. There might be meth labs. Trust me, Char. Come on, let's walk around one and see if we can work out a way to get in. Charlotte trailed after the skunk as she strode up to the nearest brick building. Its doors and lower windows were barred. The sheer brick facing looked unclimbable. Lydia stopped in the weedy alley between two buildings, leaning back to look up more easily. What do you think? Could you get up to that balcony? Charlotte looked up too. She knew Lydia didn't have very good eyesight even with her glasses, but Charlotte had a raccoon's keen night vision. That's not a balcony, she said. It looks like there was a balcony ages ago, but the door opens onto nothing now, and no, I don't think I could climb up. Can you try? Charlotte raked her fingers through her ruff. No, Lydia, we cannot climb a brick wall, and even if we could, I don't think it's a good idea. Lydia peered up at the door to nowhere. My lair, she said sadly. Charlotte giggled despite her frustration. We really don't need a lair. I want one. For rituals. Lydia was definitely joking now, or half joking. The kind of tenacious, I know this is ridiculous, but I love the idea gag that they'd probably be referring to years from now. At any minor disappointment, one of them would say in a small, sad voice, my rituals, and they'd both crack up. Until then, though, Charlotte had to make sure they weren't murdered by drug dealers. We don't need a clubhouse. There's a movie theater at the corner. Let's walk down and see what's playing. They only do late showings on weekends, Lydia said, but let Charlotte lead her back to the street. To distract her further, Charlotte asked, how will you fix up the lair? I have so many posters that won't fit in my bedroom, Lydia said. We'll need to paint strange symbols on the floor, too. Black paint or red? Both, of course. Maybe some purple, too, but tasteful. Lydia talked about her plans all the way to the movie theater, with frequent side trips to look more closely at buildings. When a police car cruised past, the skunk yanked Charlotte into the shadow of a tree. Charlotte flattened herself against the warehouse's brick wall and tried not to snort with laughter. They weren't doing anything wrong, but of course Lydia would act like someone out of a heist film. It was both exasperating and fun. It was past 11 when they reached the movie theater. The box office was closed. It was an old theater with only 3 screens, run down but somehow still in business. As the two friends stood on the edge of the small parking lot, a dozen or so patrons exited and headed for their cars. I bet that's the last showing letting out, Lydia said. She regarded the building with one paw on her chin. I wonder, let's look around back. She grabbed Charlotte's paw. I predict a stinky dumpster and an employees-only door surrounded by old cigarette butts, Charlotte said. She was right, although it was actually 2 dumpsters. A few cars were parked nearby. A row of pine trees half hid the view of warehouses up the street. I'd better get home, Charlotte said with a sigh. It's getting late and I've got an early meeting tomorrow. Ditch Dan and move in with me. I've got a walk-in closet that's almost big enough for a bed. Lydia pointed at the building. What do you suppose those windows are for? It doesn't matter because there's no way we could get up there. Charlotte checked her phone. Dan texted me with an apology. Well, it's sort of an apology. Is that a ladder? It is. Lydia hurried past the dumpsters to a fire escape ladder. It was the kind that stopped a good 8 feet above the ground to keep people from climbing up. Give me a boost, Lydia said. No. I never told your mom you were dating Jeff. She still thinks you were helping me with my algebra. Charlotte huffed. Okay, fine. We're going to get arrested and I'll never forgive you. Boost me up. It was surprisingly easy after all. Lydia caught the bottom rung of the ladder and climbed, her plume of a tail whisking back and forth for balance. The white stripes along its sides seemed to glow in the darkness. A moment later, she vanished over the top, although Charlotte heard the light crunch of her shoes on the roof. Charlotte retreated to the pine trees, both so she could hide if necessary and so she could see what Lydia was doing. The building had 2 levels, the big main one where the actual theaters were, and a second level with 3 small windows in a row. Lydia was trying to reach the first window without luck. Charlotte watched her for a few moments. She'd need another boost up to the windows. "I'm stupid and probably nuts," Charlotte whispered to herself. She zipped her phone securely in her purse, slung the purse on crossbody so she wouldn't drop it, and ran toward the ladder. She jumped at the last moment and caught the bottom rung. Easy peasy. She was halfway up when she heard the door below her open. Her heart hammered in her throat and she froze, with a keen and terrible memory of being caught in a neighbor's cherry tree as a kid, eating cherries, when he'd come home unexpectedly. She hadn't been able to move then either, not until he jumped out of his car and yelled at her. She forced herself to climb another step. The roof was only a few more rungs away. She heard voices below her, 2 guys from the sound talking about work. Another rung, another, and she was at the roof at last. She slid over on her belly and lay flat. The guys continued to talk idly. The smell of cigarette smoke drifted to Charlotte's nose. The roof was covered with tar paper coated with tiny pebbles, but it was so old that a lot of the pebbles had come loose. Charlotte pressed her cheek against them and wondered how long it would take her to comb them out of her ruff. Dan would laugh at her if he knew she was trapped on a roof. He'd laugh at her when she got home if she looked even slightly disheveled, assuming he wasn't already asleep. She resisted the urge to reach for her phone. Maybe he'd texted her a better apology. The minutes passed slowly. Charlotte ached to sit up. She might even be able to inch her way across the roof to join Lydia, who was crouched beneath the middle window. Finally, she heard one of the guys say, "See you tomorrow." Then the slam of 2 car doors, the rumble of 2 engines starting up. She didn't move until the sound of both cars died away in the distance. Lydia said, "Well, that was fun. Boost me up to this window." Charlotte dusted the little gray pebbles from her clothes. "I can't believe we're up here. This is the dumbest thing we've ever done." "Dumber than trying to make a crop circle in the Pomfrey's backyard?" Charlotte smiled despite herself. It should have worked. Their grass was so overgrown. She made a cup of her hands. Lydia placed her boot carefully in the stirrup and bounced up. Charlotte heard the skunk's claws scrabbling at the window frame. "Damn!" Lydia slid down again. It's sealed shut. "Let's go home," Charlotte said. Lydia turned around, fists on her hips. "Maybe we don't have a lair, but we can still practice rituals. It's almost midnight." Charlotte checked her phone. 20 till. Perfect! Lydia dug in her bag, the pins on its front glinting in the distant streetlight. "As you know, I'm always prepared." She pulled out a can of spray paint and shook it vigorously. "Let's get witty!" Charlotte knew that protesting only made Lydia more determined, but she couldn't help it. "You can't! We'll get in trouble." "No one's around." "The police, they'll see us." "We'll see them first." Lydia turned in place as she sprayed a circle of black paint directly onto the rooftop, so swiftly that she must have practiced. Then she followed up by spraying smaller circles around the first one's perimeter, then a larger circle enclosing them all. "Pretend I brought red paint, too. Pretend I'm writing sigils in red paint." "Sigils or squiggles?" Charlotte asked, trying to watch for approaching cars or people while still seeing what Lydia was doing. With spray paint, it's more or less the same thing. Lydia painted a different design in each small circle. "Okay, I think it's done. What do you think?" "I think you've lost your mind and I shouldn't encourage you." Lydia capped the paint can and returned it to her bag. "Where would you rather be? Here with me about to perform rituals or at home brushing your teeth?" A chilly breeze ruffled Charlotte's fur. Between the dim shapes of clouds, the sky was starry and infinitely deep. She heard the hum of cars on the interstate a few miles away, the faint buzz of a streetlight. They had the night to themselves. "Tell me what to do," she said. Lydia grinned. "Let's do a ritual to summon the moon." "The whole moon?" "The moon!" Charlotte giggled. Lydia began stepping from one small circle to the next. but within a few strides her walk had turned into a dance. "Hear us, O moon! Come to us, O moon! Come on, Char!" Charlotte fell in step behind Lydia, copying her hopping dance. The circles were slightly too far apart to navigate easily. "Hear us, O moon," they recited together. "Come to us, O moon." Lydia added, "Love us, O moon," and they both snickered. They danced faster, moving from circle to circle. Lydia's long skirt swayed, and Charlotte wished she was wearing a skirt too instead of sweatpants. "Hear us, O moon! Come to us, O moon! Love us, O moon!" Lydia added a little skip between hops, and Charlotte copied her. Before long, Charlotte was panting. Their shoes scuffed and crunched on the tiny pebbles as they danced, kicking up the smell of paint and old tar paper. "Hear us, O moon! Come to us, O moon!" Light swept across the pair. "The moon!" Lydia shouted, waving her arms. "Love us, O moon!" "It's a car," Charlotte said. Her dance faltered. "Shit, I think it turned in the parking lot." "Keep dancing! Only the moon can save us now!" It was ridiculous, it was childish and absurd, but Charlotte danced and chanted with a will, faster and faster behind Lydia, as though the moon really could save them from being found out. "Hear us, O moon! Come to us, O moon! Love us, O moon!" "What are you two freaks? Ugh!" At the sound of a man's voice, loud and sudden at the top of the ladder, Lydia squeaked in alarm, bent down, and sprayed. The smell made Charlotte gag for a moment, even as she recognized the man's voice. "Oh no," Lydia said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Charlotte gasped, but the skunk was looking over the roof's edge. Charlotte joined her. The man had made it to the ground safely at least, although he was puking into the nearest dumpster. Between heaves, he shouted at them, his words so garbled that Charlotte could only make out occasional phrases. Lydia covered her muzzle with both paws. Charlotte, I'm sorry. I sprayed your boyfriend." "It's his fault for startling you. I don't know how he found me." "We summoned him." "We summoned the moon and got a stupid coyote." Lydia lowered her paws and called, "Dan, I'm sorry I sprayed you." From below, Charlotte heard him croak, "You're a goddamn freak." "Well, of course," Lydia said. She straightened her glasses and said to Charlotte, "I'll give you my family recipe for getting it off, but he'll need to burn his clothes." Dan coughed, spat, and muttered briefly, then called, "Charlotte, get down here before that idiot gets you arrested." "How'd you find me?" Charlotte asked. "Your phone said you were here." Charlotte exchanged a glance with Lydia. "I'm a freak," the skunk said, "but at least I'm not a control freak." The breeze gusted again. It was getting colder, but Charlotte barely felt it. She was still panting slightly from the frenzied dance. "We didn't manage to summon the moon," she said. "It's probably because I didn't have any red paint. We'll do better next time." "Not here," Charlotte said quickly. "No, of course not. We still need a lair." Dan kept shouting at Charlotte, sounding more and more angry that she wasn't responding. She lifted her nose into the cold wind. From a distance, the smell of skunk spray was almost pleasant. "How big is that walk-in closet?" Charlotte asked. "Is it long enough for a sleeping bag?"
This was The Whole Moon by K.C. Shaw, read for you by the author. You can find more stories on the web at thevoice.dog or find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to The Voice of Dog.